Hello, today we're going to look at the fancy fill, and I've got an example here in a design I'm just working on at the moment, which is the snowflake, and in the center here I've done a fancy fill, and so I'll just zoom in there so you can have a closer look. So you can see here that the fancy fill is basically a satin stitch where there are the needle points are arranged so that they actually form patterns in the stitching. It's a sort of embossed look. If we go to the design view, and I'll just hide the picture that is clouding that up, you can't really see the embossed pattern unless you go to view needle points. If you select view the needle points, you can actually see the needle points in here creating the embossed pattern. Okay, so let's have a look at how you achieve that. We'll just open a new design and we'll take out the grid and the hoop because we don't want those cluttering up the picture. We just want to see what we're doing with the fancy fill. So in the previous lessons I've done, we've just used the default step fill down here, but we can choose the fancy fill from here with the pop-up menu and select fancy, and let's just create ourselves a circle so we can fill it with the fancy fill. Now I can do this, select the fancy fill before I start, or I can change it to fancy fill by selecting the object and changing the fill. I can also select the type of fancy fill I want before I start as well by selecting the object properties box, and because I've got fancy fill selected down here, it will come up fancy fill here. I can change to any sort of fill here, satin, step, pattern fill, etc., or I can leave it at fancy fill. And down the left hand side we've got all sorts of options which we can select. We can change the actual pattern. So we've got a drop down menu here, and as you can see there are heaps and heaps of patterns to choose from. We've got a scroll bar there, so you can see there's a lot of patterns in there. Okay, I'm going to choose the star pattern. I'm just going to choose that one there. Okay, and you'll see a preview of it here in this little window. Now down this left hand side we've got size changes, so we can change the height and the width here. X and Y are the height and width, and you can type in any value you like there. You can change the angle that the embossed pattern is sitting at, and I'm just going to leave the defaults at the moment, but at 0 you can type in a different angle there if you like. You can also change the stitch spacing here, so you can make the stitching less dense or more dense. And here you can change the column spacing or the row spacing and whether it's offset in comparison to the following row or the following column. So if I hold my mouse over the column spacing, you'll see over here to the right, I can't move my mouse because it disappears, but you'll see a little indicator there with arrows describing which part that's actually affecting. And if I go down to the offset, that shows that this pattern is offset a little bit, and we can change that. And down to the row and the actual offset of the row. Now we can do all this manually here and type in all sorts of values here, but I prefer to actually put the fancy fill into the object and then play around with the layout button. So I'm going to do that and then show you how this layout button works. So we'll just go OK here. We've selected our star pattern. Now we'll create our circle by selecting our circle tool, and we'll left click where we want to start our circle, and then we can left click however large we want the circle. I'll make a fairly big one so we can see what we're doing. Now I could just left click when I've decided on the radius of my circle, how big I want it, and then if I hit my enter button, I'll get a perfect circle filled with stitches. Now I'll just undo that to show you that you can also create an oval with this tool. So I've got the tool selected, I left click, and I left click for the radius here, and if I don't press enter, if I just left click, I can actually decide what shape oval I want, and left click to create the oval, then hit the button, enter button, and that will fill the oval. Okay, we'll just go back to the circle. So left click, and enter for a circle. Now I need to view needle points because I want to see what's happening. There we go. There's our fancy fill. And if I go to artistic view, we can actually see that the fancy fill is beautifully embossed there. Let's go back to design view.